You're 14 years old. In a few hours, they'll dress you in a gown worth more than an entire army's annual budget. Your wedding will be the most extravagant spectacle the empire has ever seen. Right now, while servants prepare golden candelabras and arrange mountains of silk cushions, you're trembling in your chamber. Your hands won't stop shaking because you know something none of the guests will mention. Something your father's scribes will never write music in the official chronicles. This isn't a marriage, it's an intelligence operation, and you're not the bride, you're the weapon. Your father, the Sultan, designed this mission himself, and the operational rules are carved into your memory like scars. Rule 1, your new home isn't a palace. Music, it's your prison in a province so remote the maps barely mark it. Rule 2, your husband isn't a prince. He's your surveillance target. You'll spy on him, document his every word, betray his trust, or die trying. Rule 3, if you fail this mission, the execution order won't come from an enemy. It'll come from the man who just walked you down the aisle with a smile on his face. Your father, these weren't suggestions. They weren't guidelines written in some dusty manual. They were the operational pillars of the most sophisticated terror system ever constructed. A system so perfect it ran for over 300 years without a single rebellion from its victims. Because the victims, they were too busy destroying themselves, this system turned Princess Humasha Sultan's wedding day music into the first day of her nightmare. A nightmare I'm about to show you with details so disturbing some historians refuse to publish them. And the most terrifying part, I'm saving it for the very end. But here's what you need to understand before we go deeper. This wasn't ancient history that stayed buried in Turkish archives. This was a blueprint, a manual for how to control the most dangerous people in your empire, your own family. And the techniques they perfected, they're still being used today by cults, by abusive systems, by anyone who understands that the most effective prison isn't made of iron bars. It's made of love, duty, and fear twisted together so tightly you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. If you think these stories deserve to be told without filters, hit that like button right now and subscribe, because what comes next will change how you see power, family, and loyalty forever. Now, let me show you the golden cage where they raised her. To understand why a 14-year-old princess feared her own wedding, you first need to see where she grew up. Imagine a prison so perfectly designed. The bars are made of gold and the guards bow when you pass. That was Topkapi Palace's imperial harem. From the day you're born, music, you're taught two things. You are a symbol of divine luxury, and you are a high-risk asset that must be controlled. Your education isn't designed to make you powerful. It's designed music to make you obedient. They teach you Persian poetry, but not to cultivate your mind. They teach it so you can recite verses about loyalty to the Sultan during state ceremonies. You learn court protocol not to lead, but to ensure you never make a mistake that embarrasses your father in front of foreign ambassadors. Every lesson, every book, every word carefully selected to reinforce music one fact. Your value isn't in who you are. It's in the blood running through your veins, and that blood makes you dangerous. That's why the surveillance never stops. The same eunuchs who smile and bring you sweet pastries. They're the intelligence officers who report your every word directly to your father's desk. If you show too much ambition, if you ask too many questions about politics, if you complain about your confinement just once, that report reaches the Sultan before sunset. You're not a princess, you're a classified asset under 247 monitoring, and in the harem corridors stories circulate, whispered stories about other princesses, other daughters of sultans, but there's one story that truly freezes your blood. The story of Princess Gahan, sister of Sulyan the Magnificent, chronicles record that Gan once expressed curiosity about the world beyond the palace walls, an innocent desire. She asked her father if she could visit the bazaars of Constantinople, disguised just to see normal life for one afternoon. That night, her father Sultan Selim sent her a gift, a cage made of solid gold. So beautiful it belonged in a museum so small only a single exotic bird could fit inside. When she opened it, the bird was dying, suffocating, music its wings crushed against the ornate bars. No explanation, no words, no letter, just the cage and the dying bird. The message was surgical. Your cage is bigger, but it's just as irreversible. Jehan never asks to leave again. This indoctrination, this constant surveillance had one purpose: to ensure that when your wedding day arrives, you don't see it as a door to your future. You see it as the first gate of the cell where you'll spend the rest of your life, and that gate opens with Rule 1. But wait, because what happens during the actual wedding ceremony is where the nightmare truly begins. Your wedding day arrives, and with it, the first lie becomes reality. Exile disguised as honor. The ceremony is a spectacle of power. You're paraded before ambassadors and nobility, covered in jewels worth more than some European kingdoms. Everything is designed to make the world see music, the Sultan's generosity. But behind the pageantry, there's a hidden ritual, a detail almost no historian mentions. The ceremony of the broken map, while guests admire the luxury, while musicians play, while music poets recite verses about your blessed union. The Grand Vizier approaches you. In his hands he doesn't carry a gift. He carries a map of the entire Ottoman Empire. He unfolds it on a ceremonial table. Then with a music-jeweled dagger, he cuts out the province where you'll be sent, your new home. Then he does something that stops your heart. He takes the piece showing Constantinople, the capital, the city where you were born, and burns it music right there in front of you. As the paper turns to ash, he leans close and whispers, "This is your world now. Everything else has ceased to exist. This isn't starting a new life. This is being banished with style. Your new home is typically a remote province, sometimes on dangerous frontiers, sometimes in territories where rebellions simmer just beneath the surface, far from court, far from power centers, far from any possibility of your children becoming a threat to the throne. Your husband, a governor or general loyal to your father, isn't your Prince Charming. He's your high-ranking jailer, and you're not his wife. You're the luxury hostage guaranteeing his loyalty. If he rebels, you're the first to pay the price. The caravan that takes you to your new palace isn't a pleasure journey. It's a funeral procession. Every kilometer away from Constantinople is another nail in the coffin of your old life. Watch the city's domes shrink on the horizon. You know, if you're lucky, you'll only see them again at your own funeral. But here's what the chronicles don't tell you about these journeys. The Ottoman bureaucracy documented everything, and buried in the palace archives, there are travel manifests that reveal something chilling. Supplies for these bride caravans included quantities of sedatives and restraints, because some princesses tried to run, some tried to throw themselves from the carriage, some screamed so much they had to be silenced with drugs just to reach their destination without causing a scandal. Princess Mkimria, daughter of Sullian, reportedly tried to escape her wedding caravan 3 times in 1 week. The official record states she suffered from travel sickness, but the supply manifest shows purchases of leather restraints, music, and poppy extract. She arrived at her new palace docile, broken, ready for Rule 2, because the exile was just the stage. The real terror began once you crossed the threshold of your new home. Once you became what Rule 2 demanded, a spy in your own bedroom. Rule 2 is where the he-nightmare becomes personal, where you stop being a passive victim and become an active participant in your own destruction. You become a spy. Picture this: you arrive at your new palace in a remote province. Your husband, music, a powerful man you've never met, receives you with all honors, feasts, music, public displays of affection. But in your luggage, hidden between silks and jewels, there's an object that defines your new existence. a secret writing kit, invisible ink made from lemon juice and copper sulfate, a simple cipher your father's intelligence officers taught you, and explicit instructions written in code on the inside of a jewelry box. Your husband is now your primary target. His loyalty is your responsibility. Report everything. Your mission is clear. Watch his every move. Does he complain about taxes? Does he criticize the Sultan in private conversations? Does he receive suspicious messages? Every word, every gesture, every sigh of dissatisfaction must be documented and sent back to Constantinople in coded reports carried by merchant caravans that are actually intelligence couriers. But here's the perfect psychological torture. You're expected to share his bed, to smile at breakfast, to counsel him during state dinners, to be his public companion, his trusted advisor, the mother of his children, while secretly signing his death warrant with every report you send. The level of detail they demanded was terrifying. It wasn't enough to say, "He's disloyal." You had to document dates, names of conspirators, amounts of money, meeting locations. Your father turned your marriage into the most personal and ruthless intelligence service in the empire, and the communication methods were worthy of a spy novel. They used silver tiers, a code where the type of jewelry you wore at public events indicated threat levels. An emerald bracelet, loyalty confirmed; a black pearl necklace, imminent rebellion, send reinforcements; a ruby ring on your left hand, target planning assassination. You became a walking signal flag. But here's what kept you awake at night. What if he discovers your double life? There are no courts, no trials, no appeals, just an execution order issued from your father's office, and your body floating snorts in the nearest river. Ottoman records show at least 12 cases of governors who accidentally discovered their wives' espionage activities. In every single case, the princess died within 72 hours. Official cause of death always the same, fever, but servant testimonies tell a different story. Princess Aishi, married to the governor of Damascus in 1612, was discovered reading coded messages by her husband. The official chronicle says she succumbed to sudden illness. The governor's personal physician, in a letter smuggled to Constantinople years later, wrote, "I was ordered to prepare a lethal dose of mercury and present it as medicine for stomach pain. She knew what it was. She drank it anyway," she said, "at least this way. My father can't say I betrayed him. Every day was a deadly balance between forced loyalty to your father and inevitable betrayal of your husband. This wasn't a marriage. This was institutionalized emotional torture, and it set the stage for the most brutal rule of all, the one that determined what happened when this perverse game went wrong. All the rules led here to Rule 3, to the moment when the Ottoman political machine showed its true face. It was designed to devour its own children. When you fail your espionage mission, or when your husband rebels, there's no trial, no appeal, no mercy, just silence. The most common punishment had a deceptively simple name: the revocation. One day, without warning, a sealed letter from the Sultan arrives, not for you, for your husband. The letter contains 2 orders. First, the governor is dismissed. Second, return the asset to point of origin. That was the bureaucratic phrase for your wife must return to Constantinople immediately. But here's the detail that paralyzed every princess with terror. A princess who left the palace for a return journey never arrived at her destination. Court chroniclers recorded her departure, but never her arrival. Her name simply vanished from historical records. They were political disappearances of the 16th century. What really happened to them? The methods were as cold as they were calculated. Golden drowning was a favorite. The princess was taken to an empty palace along the Bosphorus, sedated with spiced wine, and thrown into the waters wrapped in luxurious Ottoman silk, weighted with stones. A tragic accident, a suicide from the grief of leaving her husband. The official story always had an explanation ready, but there's one real case that music encapsulates all this cruelty. Princess Fane, daughter of a minor sultan, when her husband, governor of a distant province, was accused of disloyalty, she was the first to fall. Chronicles mention she was convinced to take medicine for her nerves. That medicine was a lethal dose of opium mixed with crushed diamonds. The shard would tear her internal organs while the opium numbed the pain. Her body was returned to Constantinople in a sealed carriage. Official report: death from mumps. But the servants who washed her body for burial swore they saw strangulation marks on her neck and glass-like fragments embedded in her lips. Someone wanted to make absolutely sure she was dead, and here's what makes it worse. These weren't isolated incidents. Palace archives contain a section called Returned Goods, a bureaucratic ledger that music-tracked princesses sent on return journeys. Between 1520 and 1680, there are 47 entries. 47 princesses departed their provincial palaces, only 3 arrival confirmations in Constantinople, 44 names that just end, no death certificate, no burial record, no explanation, just a final notation, asset disposed of per protocol. But there was one method even more terrifying than physical elimination: the silent room. In the deepest level of Topkapi Palace, there was a chamber that doesn't appear on any official map. Foreign architects who worked on palace renovations never saw it. It was built by deaf-mute workers who were executed upon completion. Failed princesses who couldn't be openly killed music were sometimes sent there. Accounts from palace administrators describe it a soundproof cell with silk walls. Servants brought gourmet meals 3 times daily, a window showing a painted garden, not a real one. The princess lived in absolute luxury music and absolute silence. No visitors, no letters, no sounds from outside. Some lasted years, some lasted decades. One entry from 1640 mentions, Subject 7 finally expired after 23 years of confinement. Cause unknown. Body showed no signs of violence or disease. Subject appeared to have simply stopped. She forgot how to exist. This was the price of Ottoman blood. Your father didn't kill you out of hate. He eliminated you for efficiency, because a dead daughter was less dangerous than a living princess who could become a symbol of rebellion or the mother of a future pretender to the throne. It was the final equation of Ottoman power. A father's love was a luxury the Sultan couldn't afford, and now, after revealing these 3 brutal rules, it's time to connect all the threads and answer the most important question. So what are we left with after exposing this perfect terror system? Was the Sultan simply a monster? The answer is more disturbing. He was a product of his own machine. The Ottoman Empire built a power apparatus so perfect, so efficient, it sacrificed its own flesh and blood on the altar of stability. Princesses weren't daughters, they were high-value political instruments. Their worth wasn't in their minds or hearts. It was in their wombs and their capacity to be disposable spies. The tragedy of Humasha and all like her wasn't the man they got on their wedding night. The real tragedy was realizing that the man they called father saw them exactly like he saw his enemies, as pieces on a chessboard that could be sacrificed for the final victory. This leaves us with an uncomfortable question. To what extent can a political system dehumanize those who lead it? The Sultan on his golden throne was as much a prisoner as his daughter in her gilded cage. Prisoner of a deadly paradox. To protect his empire, he had to destroy his own family. Think about that for a moment. Every loving father in history has faced the tension between protecting their children and preparing them for a harsh world. But the Ottoman system didn't prepare princesses for the world. It weaponized them against it, and here's the truly chilling part. It worked. For over 300 years, this system produced almost 0 rebellions from within the royal family. No princess-led coups, no daughter-funded revolutions. Because by the time they were old enough to resist, They'd already internalized the cage. They'd learned that resistance meant death. Compliance meant survival, even if that survival was a living death. The next time you imagine the luxury of an Ottoman princess, don't picture silk dresses or pearl necklaces. Picture a 14-year-old girl looking in the mirror on her wedding night, not seeing a bride, but seeing a ghost in golden armor. A ghost walking toward her own sentence signed by the only person in the world who should have protected her. Her fear wasn't weakness. It was the most human reaction to the most inhuman machine, and her historical silence screams louder than any imperial chronicle. If this journey into the depths of Ottoman power made you think, share it, because these stories aren't just tales from the past. Music, they're mirrors showing us the limits of power and the price of obsessing over total control. They show us what happens when love becomes a weapon and family becomes a battlefield. And they remind us that the most dangerous prisons aren't the ones with visible bars. They're the ones we build in our minds, decorated with gold and justified by duty. The Ottoman princesses are gone, but their story remains, a warning carved in silk and blood about what we lose when we let systems replace humanity. Don't let their silence be in vain.